President Trump is on his way home from Beijing, where he met with Chinese leader Xi Jinping for a second straight day. Today, their one-on-one time included a stroll through the compound of China's Communist Party. But it was aboard Air Force One just a short time ago that the president delivered news that's sure to rattle Taiwan. He says he and President Xi discussed a pending multi-billion-dollar U.S. arms deal to the self-governing island, which China claims as its territory. Listen.
We discussed in Taiwan, the whole thing with the arms sales. It was in great detail, actually. And I'll be making decisions. But I think the last thing we need right now is a war. That's 9,500 miles away. I think that's the last thing we need. We're doing very well.
Would the U.S. defend Taiwan if it came to it?
I don't want to say that. I'm not going to say that. There's only one person that knows that. You know who it is? Me. I'm the only person. That question was asked to me today by President Xi. I said, I don't talk about those things.
He asked you today.
He asked you if you would send troops, if you would defend. He asked me if I defend them. I said, I don't talk about that.
All right, let's go live right now to CNN's Julia Benbrook over at the White House. Julia, how significant are the president's comments on Taiwan?
Potentially very significant. President Donald Trump did not go into a lot of detail here, but what he did say, what he didn't say, both lead to a lot of questions. Now, this is following that summit with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, and Trump said that he did not make a commitment either way on Taiwan. When it comes to the arms sales specifically, he said that he will make that determination at some point. Now, this comes after Secretary of State Marco Rubio, in an interview with NBC News following those meetings, said that the United States policy on Taiwan remains, quote, unchanged. And diving a bit deeper into that, the United States acknowledges China's position that Taiwan is a part of China, but has never officially recognized the Communist Party's claim to the self-governing island. And Washington has robust, unofficial business with Taiwan. And so in these questions, there's also been, of course, the United States policy has been intentionally ambiguous when it comes to if it would intervene militarily if China were to attack Taiwan. And Trump was pressed on that specifically. He declined to answer, but he did say that Xi actually asked him about that question as well. He said that he did not answer it there either. Now, overall, this summit seemed to end on a high note for relations between the United States and China. Both of these leaders have been touting that there is a steadier relationship. In Trump's last remarks before he headed home, he praised China. Now, he also said that the two leaders fixed a lot of problems during this summit, but that is where we're lacking a lot of details. What each side got, there are not a lot of concrete specifics to look into at this point. Woof.
All right, Julia Benbrook at the White House, thank you very, very much.
Let's get to our chief national security analyst, Jim Sciutto, who's been listening in. Jim, who's been to Taiwan and China many, many times. This language on Taiwan from the president, the failure to commit to these arms sales to Taiwan, Jim, is this what China wanted out of this trip?
It's definitely something for China, right? Because the president did not make a commitment to a decision the U.S. had already made, right, to supply these arms. Now, he could change his mind later and decide to send those arms, to move forward on them. But a pause, if we could read it that way, is a win for China. And leading up to this, and we spoke about this prior to the summit, this had been the main concern among U.S. allies in the region, and frankly, many in this country, both Republican and Democrat, that the president would yield ground on Taiwan, whether that be on the arms sales or on language as to how the U.S. describes its relationship to Taiwan. Does it not support independence? Maybe he might move the language to it opposes independence. He didn't say that there. We don't know what he said privately, but that had been the concern going in. So here on Taiwan, from the president's statement, he gave some ground. Again, he could change it tomorrow or next week and say, actually, I'm going ahead with the arms deals, but a pause, time to think about it. He said also in his comments he's going to speak to the person in his administration who handles the Taiwan issue, is an opening for the Chinese leader. I also noted some other language in his comments here, which is him essentially parroting China's view of Taiwan. He says, hey, look, we've had it for thousands of years. He's speaking from China's perspective, and then a certain period of time it left. That is China's view, that Taiwan belongs to China, and that this brief period of time since the 40s, when it became, they can't use the word independent, but when it became separate from China, was the aberration, right? And it's much like we'll talk about the Ukraine war, right? Mimicking Russia's language about the invasion, whose fault it is, etc. I would say on Taiwan, those two things are movement in the direction of Xi Jinping. He would consider those positives. The other thing I'll say is, going into this, what was the U.S. going to get in return on Iran? Because that was a prime U.S. concern going in, and it doesn't appear, at least it didn't say, that he got any commitment from China to help there, other than to say that they'd like to see the Strait open. And he will say we don't need China, and you've heard that from other U.S. officials. But the fact is, they would certainly like Chinese pressure on Iran to help open up the Strait. Other than Boeing aircraft sales and soybeans, which, by the way, there's no written commitment, right? And if you go back to the first Trump administration, China promised to buy a whole, loads of soybeans, and they didn't buy all those soybeans. Other than that, it's hard to see what the U.S. walks away from the summit with. It's concrete.
On Iran as well, Jim, I mean, it seemed what the president is saying was discussed and agreed to when it comes to with Xi was largely previously stated positions that China does not want to see Iran have a nuclear weapon, that China would like to see the Strait of Hormuz reopen. I heard the president there say that Iran has told him directly that they do not have the technology to remove the enriched uranium from Iran. Only the United States and China have that technology. Mm-hmm. So that leaves an open question of, okay, now what?
Yeah, it does. In his comments towards the end there, Trump left open the possibility of going in, right? Is he setting up the possibility of sending U.S. forces in there, which has been an option for some time, and Israelis have considered that as well, but that would be an enormously dangerous operation. Is that a serious proposal from the president there, that he's actually considering that, given all the reporting we have that the president wants to end hostilities? Or is it, braggadocio? Is he saying, we can solve this problem? It's not as big a deal as it's been portrayed. I can't imagine a Chinese-U.S. cooperation, to get it out there in a military operation. But could that be part of a nuclear agreement if the U.S. and Iran were to move forward to serious nuclear negotiations? Possibly. Possibly. I mean, the other point I'll just make is, the president said that Iran would have used a nuclear weapon by now under the previous nuclear deal. It's not clear. There's no U.S. assessment of that, and it's not clear what he bases that on, because Iran had far less enriched uranium under the JCPOA than it has now, with more than 400 kilograms. So it's a comment President Trump has made, a claim he's made repeatedly, but there's no intelligence assessment we're aware of that the U.S. has assessed that Iran would have used a nuclear weapon in the last couple of years.
最近国际政坛最震撼的消息，绝对是美国总统川普访问北京，和中国领导人习近平见面的这一场川习会了。CNN 这支影片 Where does Trump stand on Taiwan after China talks? 直接带我们直击第一线。川普在结束2天行程，搭上空军1号准备回国时，对记者透露了一些关于台湾的最新表态。说真的，这些话听在台湾人耳里，真的是会让人捏一把冷汗，心跳慢一拍。今天我们就用大白话来好好聊聊这支影片到底讲了什么，还有川普的葫芦里到底卖什么药。大家好，我是雅尔，这是我们今天要谈的主题。看完影片，大家有什么想法呢？会面的核心争议点，军售案和保台承诺影片一开始就切入正题。川普在飞机上亲口承认，他跟习近平非常细致地讨论了那一笔高达数十亿美元的对台军售案。 结果呢，他竟然没有当场拍板说要推进，而是说我之后会再做决定。更绝的是，他补了一句非常川式风格的话，我们现在最不需要的就是一场在9500英里之外的战争。这句话什么意思？这不就是在暗示他其实很不想要美国为了台湾卷入冲突吗？更劲爆的在后面，记者直接问他，如果中国真的打过来，美国会保卫台湾吗？川普直接开始打太极说，我不想说，我也不打算说，这世界上只有一个人知道答案，你知道是谁吗？就是我。甚至他还爆料习近平当面问他一模一样的问题，他也是回我不谈这个。这种极度的不确定性跟以前拜登那种直白的态度完全不同，听起来真的是让人心惊肉跳。专家与记者的解读，美国政策骗了吗？虽然美国国务卿马可·卢比欧事后接受媒体采访时赶紧出来打圆场灭火，强调美国对台政策没有改变，依然是维持那种战略模糊的策略，但 CNN 的白宫记者 Julia Benbrook 和首席国家安全分析师 James Sciutto 都觉得川普这次的表现非常耐人寻味。分析师 James Sciutto 直接点破川普对原本已经谈好的军售案喊卡，或是说要再想想，这对北京来说就是一个实质上的胜利。这印证了美国国内不管是共和党还是民主党，甚至是亚洲盟友们之前的担忧，大家最怕川普为了跟中国达成某种利益交换，而在台湾问题上让步妥协。最让人担心的点，川普居然在学北京的死关。影片中分析师提到一个更让人毛骨悚然的细节，川普在言谈中竟然开始重复，甚至可以说是模仿中国对台湾的历史叙事。他提到类似中国拥有台湾几千年了，然后在某个时期分开了的概念。这不就是完全站在北京的角度去看台湾问题吗？分析师把这比喻成川普之前谈乌俄战争时也常常模仿俄罗斯对于入侵的说法一样，这种言论上的松动在外交上是非常危险的讯号。这代表川普在潜意识里或是在谈判桌上已经开始被习近平的论述给带着走了，这对台湾来说绝对不是好事。川习会的其他利益交换，美国到底拿到了什么？那川普在台湾问题上这么软，他到底从中国那里换到了什么好处？影片后半段讨论到，这一次峰会表面上看起来气氛融洽，双方都说中美关系更稳定了，解决了很多问题，但实际上根本缺乏具体细节。经贸方面，之前谈的波音飞机订单、大豆采购，其实都没有白纸黑字的硬性承诺。分析师甚至吐槽说，川普第一任时中国也答应要买一堆大豆，结果最后根本没买齐。国际局势在美国很关心的伊朗核问题上，中国也只是重申了以前的官方立场。川普甚至讲了一些听起来很玄的，只有美中才有技术能帮伊朗移除浓缩铀的话，随后被分析师打脸说在情资上根本缺乏依据。接下来是总结与个人评论，台湾该如何自处。总结来说，这支8分多钟的 CNN 影片是放出一个很清晰的警讯，在川普的商人思维下，万物皆可定价，万物皆可谈判。台湾辛辛苦苦求来的台军售，在川普眼里可能只是他跟习近平讨价还价的筹码。他那句不想卷入9500英里外的战争，更是大白话地告诉大家，美国第一，别人的事他能不管就不管。看完这支影片，我们身在台湾的人真的要看清风向，不能把所有的鸡蛋都放在美国一定会无条件保护我们这个篮子里。虽然川普的说法可能只是他的谈判策略，也就是所谓的交易艺术，想用不确定性来向各方施压，但这种不确定性本身就是风险， 提升自己的国防实力，在国际上灵活外交，并随时保持高度警惕，才是台湾最现实的生存之道。千万不要天争地以为靠山山倒，靠人人老，自己强大才是真的强大啊。好了，我是雅儿，如果你对本期节目有任何意见，欢迎留言。如果您喜欢我的影片，请订阅我的频道，下期再见。